Hi guys, and welcome to this week's episode where I am going to Las Vegas. And as you can see, I'm here in Heathrow, and and you can't hear him because he's in my ear, but Robert Victor's here too, and he's shouting that he's here too, but unfortunately he's not going to be coming with me. Okay, so I'm going to be waiting for my bus now, so I'll see you later. So today I am in Heathrow Airport and I am going to Las Vegas. So I'm just getting some breakfast before I actually fly. I'm a couple of hours early, but that's a good thing. And so enjoy this lovely set of videos that I'll be doing for the channel. Hello. Get off my case. Okay guys, I just discovered my first sign of police brutality. One police car came, now a second one's come for these two teenagers. They're getting double searched.
Now I for sure get like my full dose of news, be it comedic, be it really serious, be it, you know, it's a full span of the news that I want. The first one is Disney quote of the day, so I just like hearing a Disney quote in the morning. And then it's the Tonight Show, for that basically, because I couldn't hear. Alexa, who's next?
One of the things that I love about that video is it shows smart speaker usage in the bathroom, which is frankly a far more hygienic way to compute than you guys with the cell phones in the bathrooms. You know what I'm talking about. So what that does is it brings audio and computing both into every room of the house. One of the things that we know from our annual media study, The Infinite Dial, is people her age, 18 to 29, half of them say they don't have a radio in their home. Well, now she does, right? And now people are putting radios, as it were, in multiple rooms of the house, and that's opening up additional environments and additional opportunities for them to consume audio. We asked people if they were ever going to purchase another smart speaker for their household, and you can see, especially with the early mainstream, most people who have recently purchased a speaker say that they are going to purchase another speaker. And one of the main reasons, in fact, it's number 2 on this list, is to listen to news in more rooms of their house. People are beginning to put news into their everyday activities where perhaps they weren't before, when you're brushing your teeth in the bathroom, for example. So we are seeing increased consumption of news and spoken word programming as a result of these devices. And of course, number 1 on this list, to control appliances or lights in other rooms of your house. As I mentioned, especially with the more recent adopters, it's not the first reason why people have purchased these devices, but once they get them in the house and they discover all that they can do, it rapidly moves to the fore as something that they really think they want to do. Listening to news, as I mentioned, has gone up. In fact, about 7 in 10 of both first adopters and the early mainstream say that they do ever listen to news on their smart speaker. That's a very high percentage. And they spend a significant amount of time listening to news and, of course, other spoken word programming on their devices here. You can see that over a third listen to over 2 hours a week of news or more. So news consumption is being increased because it's readily available and easily accessible in multiple rooms of the house, and so it's fitting into people's daily routines. So people are asking their devices to do a lot of things, not just news. Number 1, of course, is to play music, as you can see here at the top, followed by getting the weather, answering a general question. Get the News is on this first page in the station, and again, for a lot of people, it may be the only radio that's in their house, and it's a very friction-free way to get the radio on in multiple rooms of the house. Get the traffic, check or add something to a calendar. Find restaurants and businesses. I'll have a little bit on that at the end here today. And on the last page, you see things like control household devices. You see the first adopters are more likely to do that. I'll touch on that in a moment. And play a podcast. Podcast listening is growing on smart speakers. We're seeing, especially with the people who have purchased them more recently, a real desire to listen to podcasts. In this country, about 26% of Americans, the last time we checked, are monthly consumers of podcasts. It's more than twice that with people who have smart speakers. So not only are people who own smart speakers listening to podcasts, they're also spending more time listening to podcasts than the average podcast listener. In fact, we've seen really every form of spoken word audio and music as well, audio consumption increase as a result of purchasing these devices. And you're right, we haven't really gathered around the radio since the Palmolive Beauty Box Hour of 1938. And a lot of that has to do with a decade of those little white earbuds, basically. We've spent a decade listening to audio privately, and these devices are bringing it back out into more of a communal setting. And again, it's not just audio, it's games and entertainment. And we also see that when people get these devices in their home, they don't just accidentally use them in front of other people, like friends. They do it on purpose. They kind of show them off a little bit at some of the things that they can do. So they almost sell themselves when people do that. But you're right, there's a real communal aspect, a real social audio, but also just social gaming in general, and information sharing with these devices that happens.
And barriers that may impact future adoption. And I think our presentation is going to be a little bit different than some of the presentations you might hear later today or really throughout the rest of CES, because we're not going to talk specifically about technology and the category. What we want to really focus on is the consumer. And what is the consumer thinking about new technologies, and what are the perceived benefits as well as the potential detriments that we have identified. So we want you to leave today's presentation in about 50 minutes with a really good grounding on what are consumers thinking about and what are the consumer-driven opportunities. More importantly, what is going to drive future growth. And we know for sure that what is going to drive future growth is going to be very, very different than what has been driving past growth. So for example, if we look at some of the products and the categories that have been the rock stars of the last decade, take for example the smartphone, what we're seeing is these products have really reached maturity and market saturation. So for example, in the United States, 220 million people have a smartphone. So this is a market that is pretty much tapped out. We're not going to see tremendous growth in the future in terms of smartphone adoption. But one area where we have seen pretty rapid adoption, and we're going to talk about a little bit more, is in voice. And for sure, voice technologies have grown and gone beyond the early adopters and our mainstreaming, and have done this in a very short period of time. So today we have about a third of all Americans who say they have spoke to some type of virtual assistant in the past month. That might be something on their phone, that might be something in their home. But a third say they have spoke to a virtual assistant. The number is higher for millennials. It's higher for people who live in urban areas. It's higher for higher income consumers. And for sure, the United States is one of the markets that is leading this, but this is for sure not a US-driven phenomenon. And voice is everywhere. So voice is going beyond, just kind of entertainment and the living room. It's moving to the kitchen, it's moving to the bedroom, it's really all over the house, and it's outside the house. Karen's going to talk a little bit more in a few moments about automotive. So we're seeing voice really become ubiquitous in consumers' lives today.